So, do you think this jumper's a problem? Because you said it a bit,
I
bit
feel
like
like
Santa.
with you, there's two looks. It's either Santa or it's Papa Smurf.
And this is probably like a combo of the two because I've got blue trousers on and green. I mean, Santa wears red, but traditionally Santa wore green.
Yes, yes. But the hair and all that. There is a bit of a Christmas look around you, which is all right. I mean, it's not far away. It's only 3 months.
God, okay.
In case anybody was wondering.
All right. You feeling okay being here today?
Yeah, yeah. Feeling here today. Feeling here today. I'm feeling good.
Bit nervous?
A little bit. A little
Okay,
bit.
that's good. And
You see, I'm trying to step into the shoes of Colm and Rebecca.
yes, and I appreciate it. And we have this week, I am joined by Beatrice Caffrey, who is my wife. And my brother, Colm, is out of action for a few days. He's got a personal matter going on. We're wishing him well. We're sending him lots of love, and we'll update you as we go. But we now needed an abled, capable person to come in and abuse me at a level. Oh, yeah, well,
Officially
that's
on camera.
yeah, that's for another podcast, for our own private collection. Um, but we're going to come in. We kind of preempted this by knowing that you were coming on, and we reached out on socials to see if people wanted to ask some questions. So we have some questions.
Okay.
But before we go there, what do we want people to do in terms of our podcast? We would like them to
We would like them to subscribe, follow, and subscribe,
follow
please.
and subscribe. Yes, please. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do. It makes a big difference. Send us your comments and your DMs. We are here to make some pale, pathetic attempt at answering your questions or dealing with your dilemmas. And with that in mind, we get to our question for today, which I need to now try and make sure that I can open.
Same parents, different timelines, and united by chaos. Strap on, oh, I mean, strap in, for the not so Christian brothers.
And this is for you. So, unsurprisingly, Beatrice has a massive social media following. So, when we put the question out, who was going to get asked the question, it was always going to be directed to you. And what we have is somebody's written in, Sue, who says, "So, Beatrice, um, I've been following you for a couple of years. I love what you do. And I really wanted to get an insight from you as clearly such a progressive woman running her own business. And Sue wants to know how do you feel about the way that you and Justin share, or maybe don't share, those household roles? Do you think Justin lives up to that modern man image, or is it a bit more traditional behind the scenes? And how do you feel about that evolution of roles in busy households where two people are professionals? Thanks, Sue. I really don't need that question, but okay.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, interesting because yes, I am running my own business, but before that, I was kind of more. Well, I was at home most of the time, looking after Luca, and running the house. And there was a very clear divide in the tasks in that I was doing everything. And to quite an extent, that is still the case right now, surprisingly for many people. But I think, Justin, didn't you and Colm have a conversation recently about that you didn't want to be asked to take the bins out?
Well, okay. So to set the scene correctly on this point, we were talking about the challenges in terms of relationship, and Colin was discussing in particular about the fact that his gorgeous wife Anne is going through stage 4 cancer, and he's coming to terms with the reality that at some point he's going to lose her. And he was saying that he'll have actually missed that idea or that moment of somebody asking him to put the bins out. And you heard that, and you made a very valid point when you heard that, and I thought, yeah, I probably missed that too.
Well,
If
right
you
now,
were with
I think you stated that you just don't want to be asked to take the bins out. And I said to you then, well, there's a very clear answer to that. You could just take them out so that nobody has to ask you. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I think that's a very relevant point, but I would say, and recognizing how different people in marriages deal with things differently at this stage, and we're not boomers like Colm, we're Gen X, so we're the kind of precursor to millennials, and and I come from like quite a non-traditional home in many ways. That my mother was actually the strong, more dominant personality in our household, and I think as a consequence of that, um, I probably created in my mind a clearer picture of how I wanted to be in the world. So I wanted to be this kind of dynamic go-getter who goes out there and is the breadwinner, which I did, and then you were a super mother to Luca. Whilst in fairness, you still did other things and run your own business and manage stuff at home too. But I don't really know how we just get into the traditional nature of our roles. I mean, obviously, I lived on my own before I met you,
Mm.
and so I wasn't, with somebody who was managing the traditional stuff.
Yeah, I actually I can't really remember either how we got into kind of these kind of classic roles, but to be honest, it doesn't actually bother me that much that you don't take the bins out because I think I know you well enough, and I know that you can be so focused on certain things that you just forget everything around you. And
But does that not drive you wild?
not anymore.
Okay, when did that change?
I can't remember. Maybe a couple of years ago, and I just thought, you know what? I could get annoyed about this all the time, every day, or I could just let it go and just put the bins out myself. There's a there's a certain acceptance that has come on my part that it doesn't actually bother me anymore. And it's I hear sometimes I hear other people say or women say they get really annoyed about how whatever the men or the children how they fill the dishwasher and nobody does it the right way. And I just think, you know what, if you don't feel it the right way, it's no big deal. I just appreciate now whatever you do. And then if it needs to be changed, I'll change it. And then other things, I just let them go now. So it doesn't actually bother me, to be honest. I think there was probably a long time when it really annoyed me. And I kept thinking, but why are you not doing these things? Why do you not see this? And then I just got to understand you so much better. And I know that you can go all in on a project, be that, a business, well, mostly a business project when you realize that maybe something, that can be where money can be made. Then, and,
Thanks, Terry.
probably can't make that much money from putting the bins out or hoovering the living room.
No.
And you just don't see these things. And I could get annoyed about this every day, but actually, do you know what? It's not worth the energy. And I don't mean this in a kind of a negative. It's not worth the energy. It's just I just don't get bothered about with those things anymore. And if I want them to be in a certain way, then I'll do them, and it's fine. Were you expecting something different here?
No, but yes, I can kind of understand how you come to that point and how you accept it now. And I like there are like simple things like I make the bed most days. So I do those kind of things. But I think in terms of like how we grow in our roles in our marriage, um, I think we just kind of stumbled into it, and we're probably the last of a generation where we are coming from that more kind of traditionally defined roles. Men do this, women do that. Um, but like, but also, I remember we lived in a house in Ashford in like up kind of into the countryside a little bit more from where we are now at the moment. and we had this like river that went through our house. And like you were also like down there all the time, and your waders clearing out. Like what was like
The drains were kind of directed away from the house, and you had to make sure that they were never clogged up with leaves and stuff. And I was always clearing everything out. I was basically looking after the house on the inside. I was the engineer looking after the house on the outside. I, but I actually quite enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, no, and like like I think you did a great job, but like I suppose like it could be very easy to be kind of demasculated when somebody does those.
Strangely, you never felt that way, did you?
I'm very liberal in terms of you getting into rivers and cleaning shit.
So when I take the drill out now and I start drilling holes in the wall and putting pictures up.
Well, I mean, you do, and you've done but plenty of things at a kind of a DIY level in the house as well, and I don't do that, right? I mean, I'm sure I could do it, and if I had to do it, I would do it. And I think there's times in our lives where I had to stop working because I didn't. I exited a business or whatever, and I was prohibited for working for months, and then I would have really rolled in to do stuff because I go crazy. I'd rather do things than sit around without anything to do.
Yeah.
But I think as well in terms of like those roles in a household, like if one person is able to spend more of their time bringing in more money than the other person at that moment, then that seems to be like a fair kind of trade off from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also situation was obviously that I had stopped working when I was pregnant with Luca. I worked in hotels before, and I had no desire to go back into that industry. So when Luca was born, and then I didn't have a job to go back to. Like, somebody would be on maternity leave and they would go back to their job. I didn't have that because I had resigned from my previous job. As you remember, when I was working in London, I had resigned there. And so I didn't have a job to go back to. I kind of had to find something new to do. And then, obviously, as we both know, we went through the loss of our son Joshua, and it certainly took me a couple of years also there to just find myself again and just to realize what did I actually want to do with my life. As you remember, I didn't want to go back into the hotel industry because it was too time consuming. So I think I was quite happy to go into that, to take the time and go into that more traditional role. And you were very happy back then to go out and go back into your career and to work and travel and spending the time out. So I don't regret the fact that we fell into these more classical roles. And I know that maybe now that's probably, it is very different nowadays.
Yeah, it's funny though, is that would be like our shared collective memory. But as you say it to me now, and you talk about that period of time, when we like after our second son Joshua died, we moved to Ireland. We had this kind of like you know bizarre transition where we had to figure out who we wanted to be in Ireland, how we wanted to live our life. We'd had a year of taking care of somebody with hugely challenging needs and limited life expectancy, and then we have to like okay brush it all off and start again. And I think when I think back to a couple of those years, I felt like a huge burden of responsibility to have to go and make money and rebuild, because
Mm.
that year in Spain and all of Joshua's stuff and life was on hold cost us a lot financially. So I felt huge responsibilities, and I couldn't communicate that at that stage. Like I should have. I needed to be able to say to you, this is really quite overwhelming, and I didn't know where to start. Like first of all, it was 2010, 2011.
Mm.
It was 2011. It was Ireland. The economy was on its knees. There was no hope of really trying to make any money in Ireland. I think at one stage I said to you, I've been offered a really good job in a bank.
That would
And
have been a disaster for you.
yeah, yeah. Do you remember? Do you remember? Yeah, you remember you saying that I wouldn't be able to take any direction if I had a job.
No, you wouldn't be able to work for anybody else.
Okay, so and I haven't worked for anybody in 30 years. So that meant, okay, it's all on you, as in me, and I've got to do it. And it wasn't really all on me, but I couldn't. I think, I think I was. I think my masculinity would have been threatened if I had have said to you, "I'm really worried. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can start again. If I
Mm.
can build a business again. I really don't know."
Yeah, but probably if you had said something, we could have had a, or we would have had a conversation around it. But I think it's really difficult for men to say it out loud, that you feel vulnerable or that you feel unsure about where you're going to go with your career.
Yeah, I think it is. I remember once, like, if I go back to 2007, the financial crisis happened, and the latter part of 2007. And I remember, like, that winter was particularly bleak, right? It
I
was like,
can't remember that winter.
well, I know you don't, right? But I
2000. Well, Luca was born, so we had a 6 month old baby.
with a
Uh,
6 month old baby. But I felt like, because we were in this house in West Sussex and it was cold, and if you remember, the used to be the wind used to come up our garden, because like our garden was down from the sea, and there was like this natural pathway for wind. And we had these shutters, and I hear these creaky noises, and I often felt like I'm immersed inside some kind of Emily Bronte movie, like there was some kind of character tapping on the window, going, "We're coming to get you," because I was absolutely, like, scared shitless of what was happening in terms of my business at that moment.
mm.
The whole financial world was upside down, and I had huge responsibilities, massive debts, huge levels of commitment in businesses, so
There
much
I
going.
was, and there I was asking you to take the bins out.
And there you were saying to me, "Can you?" And I'm like, "Do you have any idea how much?" No.
Do you know how important I am?
And back in that house,
Pretty sure you said that.
maybe I probably did, and if I did, I apologize. But I always remember, on one of those, stormy nights in the moors, where I felt like Emily Bronte was penning the story, saying to you, "I'm really, really worried about what's going on." I remember lying in bed saying to you, "I'm really, really worried about what's going on." And I don't know how I mustered up the courage to do it, but um, I said, "Look, the business is under pressure. I knew we were going to have to make, 80, 90 people redundant, and many of them were friends and people I'd recruited into the business for years." I also think, in 2007, I was 32, so I was very young. I didn't have any experience, and you think you're supposed to know everything. But you just looked at me and went, It's okay. We'll figure it out, and whatever happens, we'll kind of get to it."
Yeah, probably an attitude that I still stand by.
But isn't it funny that, like, you didn't solve my problem, but you created maybe the space or safety for me to speak about a vulnerability. And I always think, like, these moments, like that kind of mental health is like a fart, right? It's just
Mm.
better out than in, right? Obviously, if I'd have just farted on your pillow, it would have been,
I don't know. That would have been very different.
very different outcome. But I think when you,
This is the way it's going, Justin. We're not going to be okay.
yeah, we were, young, and only recently married, and I mean, you were just after giving birth to Luca, and at that moment, I did meet strange noises from your body, and you farted a bit more after pregnancy. So we were kind of accepting of
All right
noises.
then. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Accepted.
she farts a lot. Okay, no, she doesn't fart. Never, like the Queen. Um, but I think having the conversation and being able to speak about it, although you weren't solving the problem, you were listening to me.
Mm.
And then it kind of rolled me on to a conversation many, many years later on a similar topic, like of trying to find how we navigate relationships and responsibilities. And do you remember, um, what you said to me about listening to you.
Yes. That when I come to you with a problem, I don't want you to fix me.
Yeah.
I just want you to listen.
Yeah. Okay. So Terry's wife says all the time, and
Can
here
I
we go,
just
man.
can I just throw in that this morning I told you about a problem and you instantly tried to fix me.
Really? Okay. So I haven't been fixed. That's interesting. Or I haven't managed to improve.
But I think it's kind of your attitude that you know, if somebody comes to you with a problem or if you have a problem, you want to fix it. And I think it's a male thing very often. You want to fix a problem.
Okay. I think. Okay. So I think you're being really unfair here, right?
Okay.
Because you said to me many years ago, I just want you to listen. I want you to hear what I have to say. And I think I have made huge efforts to
Oh wait,
be
absolutely. Yeah.
actively listening.
Yeah.
This morning, I had just finished my work on my hips, which the great Lawrence, who has been in Greystones for the weekend, is the master of flow and ropes and everything else. And you said to me, "Oh, you had a problem with your hips," and I actually thought you were being quite directional in that question. So I actually thought you were saying, "Oh, you've been talking about hips," and I'm like, literally, I've been doing the exercises. So I was only saying to you in that context that maybe I can help. I wasn't trying to fix you.
That's okay then. Accepted.
Jesus. Okay. Yeah.
How we got that on camera.
But if you think through that whole idea of us finding our feet and finding that cadence, I find it interesting too, isn't it, that how like relationships evolve, because if I think about, we got married in 2005, Luca was born in 2007, Joshua was born in January 2010, and by January 2011, Joshua died, our second child. And I think, you know, the the January 2011 onwards, like everything about our relationship was unquestionably turned upside down and changed.
And we hadn't actually been together very long at that stage.
No, we hadn't at all. And then you brought a lot of calm energy to that transition period, and you managed to stay or to find a path out of that. Very different to mine, and I'm not going to get into mine here because it's a complete shit show. But I find it always very interesting how you navigated from that point over those months afterwards, losing Joshua. Are you okay to talk about that? I haven't preempted you.
No, yes, I'm absolutely okay. We got our first dog, and as you mentioned, we had just moved to Ireland, and I was pretty much Billy no mate. I didn't really know anybody, so I mostly spend my time walking in the Wicklow Mountains with the dog, and as a consequence, that was actually a really good thing to do. I realized much later because it just helped me to process things, not even process it, but just to think through what had actually happened in the year before. Because as you remember, it was so things that it evolved so quickly, and we didn't really have time to process things as they were happening. So having that time afterwards was actually really really good for me. And I think I had pretty much 2 or 3 years where I wasn't necessarily trying to develop new friendships because obviously I was new in the area where we lived. I wasn't seeking for new friendships. I was just trying to kind of understand what had actually happened. So walking in nature was the best thing to do.
And it's interesting because obviously coming through something like losing a child, you can kind of have a tendency to want to move away from it, but you're like moving closer to it and opening up to it and being with it and allowing it to kind of pass through the body in reality. Like it's the
Yeah.
mind, it's the body, it's that movement in nature that's so powerful. I mean, and it's quite incredible. I tell people this all the time, but not all the time because that would be a bit odd. But I tell people this.
Your icebreaker.
Yeah.
Networking events.
Yeah. Let me tell you
Or
about the tragedy of my life.
when you're trying to make new friends.
Yeah, let's not go there again. Yeah. Terry.
No
No,
friends in this
even
house.
Terry said no to me last week as a friend, so it's a real struggle. but but in terms of how you came through that, I always say to people that you didn't actually have therapy
No.
for losing Joshua, and I know you've spoken at length and on other podcasts, and especially on Rebecca Horn's A Little Birdie Told Me. If you want to hear more of Beatrice's story, you can definitely get it over there. But I think it's, to me, it's always like amazing that you got through that without anybody else, and especially I don't think I really contributed, to be honest. But so it was an inside job.
Yeah, and it wasn't a conscious thing. It was probably a subconscious thing that I just always wanted to be out there with the dog as much as possible.
Is that because I was at home?
No, you actually not at home. Remember, I think you started traveling quite a bit, and obviously Luca had started at school. So you were actually going back into your career. Luca was starting, school, and he was starting to make friends. So you both had things to go to, and so for me, then being every day out with the dog was absolutely perfect, and it felt right. And I didn't really think about now this is what I have to do. It just felt like the right thing to do.
And from your perspective, right, and rather than me talk about this because I can answer it in a very clinical way and in terms of my studies and interest in this topic, but as an individual who's been through so much, like, well, what would your top tip or top takeaway be for people who are listening to this, who are going through whatever marital breakup, relationship breakup, friendship loss, grieving, dealing with the death of a loved one?
There's no timeline to your grief or to the process. You just have to, or there's no finishing line. It's not there's not a day when you will, or when that you say a time period when you'll be through it and you will, you know you'll be okay. It's just it's ongoing, and just have to let it happen.
Nice. And I think, for me with Joshua, sometimes I now notice that maybe even like 2 weeks could go and I don't think about him.
Mm.
How do you get that length of period?
Yeah, yeah, I probably have that as well. There can be sometimes, yeah, I would say probably also, yeah, it can be. It, I think we've spoken about this before. I think at the start it's something you think about all the time, and it's constant, it's nonstop, and then as the time goes on, it be the time, the distance in between the moments become bigger and bigger. Um, yeah,
Nice. So time is a healer, really.
yeah,
Eventually,
absolutely, yeah,
eventually,
yeah.
eventually. Don't try and nail it in particular.
Don't let anybody else tell you how quickly it should happen.
Yes, I think everybody's grief is individual, and you've
Mm.
got to feel into your own. Okay, and um, so a second point, which has also come in from, I suspect, another one of your followers, who are many women who love what you do and how honest you are. So Leanne says, Beatrice, now that your parenting role has changed as Luke has grown older, how do you find a new sense of purpose beyond just being a parent? Or sorry, how did you find it? So obviously she's speaking to your business and your influencer role. So how did that evolve? How did you find that? I mean, I've kind of seen you do it, but is it a strategy? Was there a plan?
No, I think, for both of us, well, for me, I think for both parents, it's really important for the children to see that both parents have interests outside of the family, that they're, and maybe more so for the mother, if you have the role where you're more at home, that your kids also see that you have interests in other things, that your role is not just being the taxi driver and doing the school pickup and preparing the meals and all these kind of things, but that you have other things aside from them. And I think, for the fathers just as much, I think that's just as important.
Yeah, and I think if I think about my role, okay, so I don't cook. I don't do the traditional cooking. No, sorry, I'm traditional. I don't cook. Um, but you cook.
When you do, you do it very well.
Uh, yes, there was those that.
It's a few years ago.
2007.
Yes.
Where I had 3 months and I cooked phenomenal dinners, and I still recount on that. And I know it's
I'm
like
kind of
20 years.
worried that if you did start cooking, you'd probably turn it into a business.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
No.
So I think we found our feet in terms of accepting and acknowledging that we do different things. And I spent an awful lot of time at Luca in terms of his sport and being involved in that all the way through. But I think for you and growing your business and building your business now, and having that, I think, especially as you have like an 18-year-old now who's finishing school and going on to his education, I can see how it's really given you that sense of self,
Mm, yeah.
and giving you that sense of purpose where you're doing so much for other people. And I think that always to me stands out as a motivator.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's really important that you have interests outside of your kids, that you have something for yourself. And don't do it because you want your kids to be interested in that, because you want some kind of approval from your kids, because your kids don't care. Like if they're 15, 16, 17, they have no interest in what you're doing. That's the reality. So don't do it because you want them to get involved in it, or do it for yourself. That's really important. You might be doing something like, Luca sometimes might ask me questions about the gym, about certain exercises, about certain techniques and forms. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, "Ooh, my son's asking me. That's great."
Yeah, and
But I
I'm
don't.
further demasculated again because you're
Just ask you.
WSV. Yeah, yeah, it's great.
But yeah, it's really important you have something for yourself, and you need to develop before they kind of become teenagers, because they will have other interests and they're not going to be interested in you anymore, and you're going to be sort of removed from their life, and that's a normal process to happen. So you have to have something else. You've
And
got to be ready for that.
I think that's a whole other conversation for us to have maybe another time about that reality that teenagers are you know incredibly difficult, highly tasking, and you have to be able to find that peace with the reality that you ain't that cool or interesting anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a grief, really, as well.
Yeah.
Like it's hard,
Yeah.
and I think for men it's even harder. But we've nailed it. You see, we're coming here thinking, "Oh my God, what are we going to talk about?" And I just literally gave you like 5 minutes notice that I needed you
Yes.
to step in for Colm. So I really appreciate you being here.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you. And
Am I doing the after show as well?
well, yes, we'd love you to come back. So Rebecca's with us on Friday, and we're going to do the
That's
after
going to
show.
be fun.
So yeah, I mean, the two of you on the sofa, and Rebecca's going to absolutely go to town on me for gender roles. I can feel that already. So yeah, if you're up for it, we'd love to have you back for the after show.
Yep.
And again, for those people who haven't done the all important thing yet, what do you now know that everybody has to do?
Like, subscribe, and follow.
Like, subscribe, follow. So
I did panic there early on when you were looking at me.
yeah, sorry, I didn't tell you anything about what we're going to do. So please join in the conversation. If something resonates with you today, let us know. Hit us up on socials. Put it into the comments below. Remember, we're now on video on Spotify, on YouTube, all unusual platforms. Search up Not So Christian Brothers, website notsochristianbrothers.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Beatrice Caffrey, and
Thank
we'll
you,
be
Jason
back
Caffrey.
with the after show.
Thank you.